Hello, welcome back to Movie Husbands. Today we're reviewing Marcel the Shell with Shoes On. Marcel, a 1-inch tall shell, lives with his grandmother Connie, the only residents of their town after their neighbor's sudden, mysterious disappearance. When discovered by a guest amongst the clutter of his Airbnb, the short film he posts online brings Marcel millions of passionate fans and a new hope of reuniting with his long-lost family. The film is directed by Dean Fleischer-Camp and stars himself and Jenny Slate. So Matt, what did you think of Marcel the Shell with Shoes On?
So this is going to be a little bit of spoiler for the end with grades, but I absolutely loved this movie. I thought it was so wholesome. It was so caring and loving and introspective all at the same time. I loved how it balanced all of those things with all these reflections on culture and society and relationships. There are things in this film that have to do with grief, with loneliness. This film has something to say about our relationship to celebrity culture and people that go viral. That's like a minor part of the film. And I think in the big scheme of things, this film's main purpose and goal is a reflection on kind of community and family. And it was so well done. I have not cried in a theater so much over a little shell with shoes on in my life. Not like a film exists like that before.
Yeah, say, how many movies about little shells have you seen?
But in terms, I guess, of animated stop motion features or animated films in general, this film just packed such an emotional punch that I just wasn't expecting.
This isn't a children's film, but this is a film that's rated PG, that doesn't have any curse words or anything that your kids can't see. I was listening to a podcast a couple days ago called The Watch, which is one I regularly listen to, and Andy on that podcast has 2 girls who I think are like 7 and 8 years old. He took his girls to see this movie and they really liked it. So I could see a kid liking this movie and liking many things about it, even if some of the more poetic or kind of heavier elements maybe go over their head. But I think what separates this film from films of the like is what it's exploring. We have seen it explored in children's films before. There's always kind of a major death. There's a major death in The Lion King. There's a major death in Bambi. But what sets it apart is its poeticism. Like, it just has a way of conveying grief and death and all of these things that are a part of life in a way that just feels far more poetic, far more lyrical than I was really anticipating, especially if, this is based off the viral video, Marcel the Shell with Shoes On, which came out like 12 years ago. I remember seeing it in college and thinking how cute it was. It was like a sensation. And to see how that, which was a funny, cute, and clever video, kind of morphed into this film about grief and death and community and solitude and things that we're usually talking about in like hard R-rated, like heavy independent films that are going to be nominated for the Oscars and win the Palme d'Or and stuff. So it's a lovely film. It really is.
As you were saying, this film like sets itself apart in terms of animated features and these themes. I think so much of that comes down to the childlike quality that is maintained throughout this movie. And in particular with Marcel, his character often reflects on the world in a very simplistic way, that of kind of like a child, but which ends up being so informative in so many of these scenes in which he is faced with a situation or something that's greater than his age readies him for. So when he's faced with a loss, or when he's faced with even how much bigger the world is than he thought it was, the reaction that he has is so simple but so real and so grounded. And I think that's one of the things that I love so much about the film, is that it's not necessarily that he's dealing with these more adult themes, but it's that he's facing them from the perspective of being a kid.
Yeah, we talked about this in our Come On review, but sometimes like kids have this way of saying things that is just so perfect that you forgot about in your like convoluted adult mind how simple life can be, and how there are these simple morals that we're supposed to follow that kids remind us of. Like, Marcel has these cute little childlike proverbs that just come along in the film. Where Marcel lives is in this house where this couple broke up, and that's why the house is empty now. That's why it's an Airbnb. And she says, oh, the couple stopped talking to each other and started yelling at each other, which is a really interesting and kind of simplified proverbial way to talk about how a relationship deteriorates, how things escalate, how you start yelling instead of talking. There is no more de-escalation, there is no more talking, there's only yelling, which is something that I just found really insightful. There's plenty of those in the film.
Yeah, one of my favorite moments, it literally happens 20 minutes in. I started bawling because he's kind of depicting this wonderful, beautiful day with this wonderful breeze. So he remarks on this of how if he were only a different person, he might be able to enjoy this moment of this day fully. And that just completely destroyed me in that moment, 20 minutes into the film. And one of the things I loved about that scene in particular, and the movie as a whole, is that it never strays farther than how Marcel perceives the world around him in this very simplistic form. It doesn't over dramatize the plot of him trying to find his family or his relationship to his grandma for the sake of kind of like unwarranted emotion. It results in this film just like constantly feeling super grounded and personal to you.
Maybe like back in history before we had 300 something subscribers, we had a video where we were debating the movie Up, and I don't really like Up very much, and you think Up is really good. To me, Up starts at a place that's really, really insightful and then becomes like just a big fun journey to nowhere. And this movie never goes on the journey. I mean, I'm stealing words you said to me after, so I should credit you. But it's true, just when you think the film is like, they're gonna go on a journey and find his family, it doesn't do that. The whole movie is just kind of about sitting with those introspective thoughts and these little kind of witticisms about everyday life that Marcel is able to articulate in ways that we just can't.
And it knows that those emotional beats that it has to hit, that it has to build and earn. There's this whole 60-minute bit where Marcel and his grandma love to watch 60 Minutes. And they don't take advantage of that whole concept of 60 Minutes showing up and making a big deal out of it. They show really the relationship between how 60 Minutes is such an important aspect of his relationship with his grandma and how that ends up turning into a thing between them, as well as how it results in the ending of the movie. So I just think that even something like that in the building of finding his family ends up being something that is just so easy and not over dramatized at all.
Yeah, the film never goes bombastic ever, even at its most emotional moments. Its most emotional moments are actually so emotional because it's so kind of quietly profound, right? Not because people are yelling and crying or shells are yelling and crying.
And I think that goes to how the film is shot. It's filmed in this docu-sense style. It has a very shallow depth of field. The focus is very sharp. Everything else is blurred in the background to the point where there are some times where Marcel is having this very introspective moment and saying things that are so profound. And the camera is jittery and unfocused. You can't even see him in the shot, but he's kind of fizzled out in the background, which I think also shows just the perfect imperfection in it all.
This speaks to what you're saying probably in a more abstract way because you work with cameras and you can explain them really well. I can't really. But this movie had an aura and a look that reminded me a lot of the indie films that were made between 2000 and 2010. A lot of shots of windows with sunlight coming in, of pretty plants and things like that, and kind of these little wooden structures by windows. It's a hard thing to explain, but if you've seen the way Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind is shot and its opening shots specifically reminded me a lot of this film. This kind of aura and feeling you don't get a lot from indie films anymore. The 1990s had a certain aesthetic, the 2000s had a certain aesthetic, and now we're on to a whole different aesthetic with indie movies that doesn't look like this anymore. So we talked a lot about the kind of quiet power this film has. We haven't talked a lot about how funny it is. If you've seen the original Marcel the Shell video, it's all of the funny little ways that they're imagining Marcel living his life in that video, but times 100. Marcel has to concoct these ways to go about everyday life that are just hilarious because he's so small. So for instance, there's so many of these that I feel like I could spoil one of them, but they tie a string to a kitchen mixer that's attached to a tree so they can turn the mixer on and it makes the tree shake and all of the fruit falls off of it so they can get the fruit. There are all these little ways that they have to live their life that is just so funny and so clever.
So you ready to go to grades?
Yeah, I give this movie an A-. I really think it was lovely. I think it was very profound. We didn't talk about this, but I like how it treats the video as canon almost, the video becomes part of the film. So that has that kind of meta aspect of it, which is kind of interesting. But it's just so quietly profound. It's a really lovely theater-going experience. And I think it ends on a note that is just perfect.
I could not agree with you more. I give this movie an A. I absolutely adored it. It's definitely one of my most favorite movies of the year. I love how it balanced all these emotions and was just so well done. I also have to add, because you were just talking about how this was based off the YouTube video that came out 12 years ago. I did not ever see that video until I basically saw the trailer to the film. We saw it in the theater where we were watching another movie, and I was pretty much just enthralled with this trailer. And then you told me it was based off the video. You showed me the video, and I was like, I am so excited for this. And it just exceeded my expectations in every way.
And that's it for a review of Marcel the Shell with Shoes On. Did you see this film? Let us know what you think in the comments, and we will see you next time.